back, my friends, to the D-Rate the Hate podcast. I am your host, Wilk of WilkWorld.com, and I am so incredibly grateful that you have taken the time to join me for another great episode. Here at the D-Rate the Hate podcast, we're all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. You know, we did not create the hate, but with your help, we can derate the hate. It starts with each of us as an individual. So what have you done today to make your life a better life? What have you done today to make the world a better place? Making your life a better life starts with individual accountability. How we act, how we react, no matter what happens to us, how we react to it makes the difference. Friends, one of the great things about a bad attitude is we as individuals have the power to change it. One great way to do that, share the D-Rate the Hate podcast. Share it with your network of friends. Get them to share it. Subscribe. Leave us ratings and feedback. Always greatly appreciated. And with that, let's go. I am honored this week to have as my guest Michael Ashford. Now, Michael is a former award-winning newspaper reporter and editor of the Emporia Gazette in Emporia, Kansas. His years of journalism experience sharpened his interviewing skills and taught him how important listening and asking follow-up questions is to get the full and real story. Michael has transferred that skill set into the podcasting space, now focusing on the power of storytelling. He is still a self-described independent journalist, digging below the surface of the cliches and clickbaity headlines to uncover nuance and detail that lives within most important issues we face these days. With Michael's podcast, The Follow-Up Question, he aims to remove assumptions and opinions from the answers he asks and instead let his guests' stories reveal themselves within their own answers. Michael has a passion, as I do, for bettering the world in which we live, whether it's through writing articles, giving an inspirational TEDx speech, or interviewing intriguing guests on his podcast. If Michael is saying it, it's well worth the time to read, watch, and or listen. Again, I'm incredibly honored to have as my guest this week, Michael Ashford of The Follow-Up Question. With that, do not miss another great conversation here on the D-Rate the Hate podcast. Let's go. Michael Ashford, thank you for joining and welcome to the D-Rate the Hate podcast. I greatly appreciate your time, man.
Wilk, I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to the conversation here, man.
Yeah, I recently became familiar with your The Follow-Up Question podcast. Very good stuff, man. We speak a lot of the same language. We talk a lot, follow the same path in a lot of different ways, and saw that we had some common guests in our past, and was real excited when we got to set this up. So thank you so much for joining me. What, Michael, got you started? What was the catalyst for you starting the Follow-Up Question podcast?
I was sitting on my couch in the summer of 2020 with my wife. Our kids had gone to bed, and we were watching the local news. And we were watching the protests and the police response in the wake of the George Floyd murder. And my wife and I were just sitting there talking about, this is crazy. We have never seen anything like this. I was even paying attention, because I'm a former journalist, I was paying attention to the language that the on-air anchors, what they were using, the language they were using. And it was all just a little unsettling to me, because none of us, like I mentioned, really, my generation and younger have never experienced anything like this.
Right.
I was born in the early 80s. And so I don't understand. I didn't live through the 50s and 60s, right? And the civil rights movement. So the summer of 2020, on top of everything else that we were dealing with in terms of, a global pandemic. And then, just the election of 2020 that was so vitriolic and hate-filled. I'm having that conversation on the couch with my wife. I'm watching this historic moment in time on the local news and just thinking, there's got to be a better way than this. I really don't think that the images that I'm watching on TV right now are indicative. They're indicative of a snapshot moment in time, yes, that obviously a lot of stuff has happened before that to reach this boiling point. But I really, truly, honestly believe if we sat down and as individuals, as humans, began to relate to one another a little bit more, to discuss what we believe and how we came to those beliefs, I actually think we would, for the most part, understand that we have a lot more in common than we don't. We just often choose to align more with the things that we don't have in common rather than the things that we do have in common. And there are a lot of other things that push us that way. So that moment, that conversation, the entirety of what was going on in our world at that point pushed me to start the follow-up question, because as a journalist, I knew how to do one thing really well, and that's interview people. And if I can pull these stories out of people and these commonalities out of people, I think I can do some good in the world. That's where it all came from, man.
Absolutely. That it's so important to have voices that are doing what you're doing, what I do with the D-Rate the Hate podcast, because like you were talking about, those snapshots in time, those little things, and especially now, Michael, with the 24-hour news cycle that we have, and everybody trying to outdo the other person, and not only are your major news networks and your major media networks trying to outdo each other, but they're also trying to outdo all these toxic voices. And let's face it, and it's something that I talk about on my podcast all the time, is division sells. That vitriol is what sells, and oftentimes we find that the people that know the least say it the loudest. The people that are the most divisive get the most airtime. So you're right. What you're looking at on the screen is just painful, because it's not the reality that most people see in their lives. Especially if let's face it, the vast majority of what you see in your major media networks are not the snapshots and not the real life things that people in everyday America, unless you're in the inner city somewhere or in some major metropolitan area, a lot of what you see on those networks, a lot of that division, a lot of that hate, a lot of that vitriol is not happening in everyday America with everyday people. So I think it's important.
And let's be honest too, I don't want to discount this as well. That the protests that were happening in 2020, they were happening for a very good reason. It was the boiling point of a lot of years of frustration and angst and anger, very justified, by the way, for a lot of people in this country. We were seeing the explosiveness of an entire group of people saying, I'm sick of not being listened to anymore. And this very in your face view of the struggle of Black people in this country that we saw when we watched that officer kneel on George Floyd's neck for nearly 10 minutes, that struggle, that is a very real thing. And I don't want to discount that in saying that I think we have more in common than we don't. I don't want to discount the very real, nuanced relationships and feelings that are out there. But to your point, man, I think if we got each other in a room in more one-on-one settings and removed ourselves from the constant stream of anxiety-inducing news that we are continuously fed, we'd find more commonalities, we'd find more common interests, we would find more things that we share rather than things that divide us. And like you talk about on your show, I mean, it's one of those things that it's not talked about enough. And so I'm glad that there are people, out there. There are many people, not just you and I, trying to drive these conversations forward.
Oh, without a doubt. And yeah, to the point that you just made, yeah, there was a lot of frustration, decades, even centuries of frustration, for what happened. And people can disagree about the level of frustration, a level of of action that was taken. But yeah, you're right. There was a lot of justification to the anger, the frustration. Certainly not a justification to the violence and the damage and the destruction that happened. But you're right. People need to have the conversation beforehand so that they don't get to the point of the violence, the destruction, the chaos, the mayhem. And if more people asked questions, if more people got together with those with whom they disagree and just asked questions, had the conversation, you know, uh, got rid of that barrier of ignorance between us, we probably wouldn't see things like that. Certainly not justifying what happened, but the fact that we're just not talking in a lot of respects. We're not getting to know one another and bridging those divides before it gets to that point is what makes doing these kind of things that we do, Michael, so important.
No doubt.
So let's talk a little bit, Michael, about what you've found so far in a lot of the conversations that you've had, whether it being able to articulate your position in a conversation with somebody who you have nothing in common with, finding that common ground. What have you found in your experience that's been the most effective way in bridging those divides?
This is one of the most exciting things for me because I went into this not knowing what I would find, right? I was looking for threads of common ground, and I knew that asking questions and just sitting back and letting people talk was going to be my contribution to that. The most exciting thing for me, Will, is that I have found that the people who are the most adept and skilled and most self-aware, that's the huge one. The most self-aware people in the world follow this pattern, I will say, of asking questions. Like the very thing that I was doing, asking more questions, is the thing that the most self-aware people do. But they do it in this pattern of first they ask questions of themselves. They get curious about the thoughts in their head and their own experiences. And they question why and how they came to the beliefs that they hold. What was it about their upbringing? What was it about where they lived, the community, their friends, their family, their were they religious or not? Like just all these things. They get curious about themselves and they start to ask themselves these questions in their minds. Then they ask questions about others. They're still in their minds. They're still in their heads, and they're getting curious about others and saying, well, if I believe this and if this was my experience, how might somebody else who had a different experience than me come to a different belief? How might, if I grew up in a very, faith-based home in rural Kansas and, small town Kansas, and had both of my parents and had two, middle-class America, white family, how might my experience change or give me a view of the world that might be different from somebody on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, from experience, from family, from religious experience, like just all that. They get curious about other people.
Mm-hmm.
Then finally, they ask questions of other people. They start seeking those people out with different experiences and different views of the world, and they get curious with them. And they start asking them questions to bring about a full understanding of another human being. Because I know you've had Monica Guzman on your show. She wrote the book, I Never Thought of It That Way.
I actually just had a conversation with her this past week, and we'll
right.
be talking about her new book.
Yeah, just an incredible TEDx talk that she gave.
Yep,
and one of the things that she says is those people who are underrepresented in your life will be overrepresented in your mind. And those people that go and ask questions of others, they're trying to bridge that gap.
Absolutely.
That's what I found. That is the most exciting thing that I have found in all of this, is that pattern of people who are self-aware and can think with nuance. They don't boil things down to this false duality of choice where we're either right or wrong, or we're good or bad, or we're evil or, fair or unfair, or you're either with us or you're against us. They don't do that. They understand, well, maybe, but maybe not. And I
No,
think that's super exciting, man.
it is. It's incredibly exciting, and just like in the conversation that I've had with Monica about that, being curious is such an important part of who we are as a people, and she makes it very clear that not just asking why,
Mhm.
not just asking, well, why do you feel that way, but actually asking how may have they got to the point where they're at. How is
Exactly.
it that they got there? And then, trying to build that common ground, build that relationship prior to the negativity of the disagreement, let's say, becoming or building empathy by asking how rather than simply asking, well, why do you do this way? It's just like growing up. If I did something wrong, my parents would be, why did you do that? What were you thinking? Why did you do that? And it's almost combative, right? But
It is. It
if
is, and it's a way to sneak in assumption or opinion into
it
the
is,
question,
yep,
right?
you're leading the witness, so to speak, right?
Yep,
But
exactly.
but but if you actually ask, how is it that you arrived at a point where this is the way that you feel? That is a much, much better way to think about it than simply asking why. And I love that part of that conversation. I love that mindset because it's so important because it actually makes the other person feel that you genuinely care about how they came to their position versus simply, well, why do you feel that way? And you get rid of some of that combativeness, and it's so important that we do that in conversations if we ever have the hope. And I want to make it very clear too that not every conversation comes to common ground. Not every conversation is going to come to an agreement. But like I like to say quite often, is that disagreements, like mistakes, are an opportunity to learn something. Just
Yeah.
because you and I are going to disagree at the end of the conversation doesn't mean I can't learn something. Just like my conversation back in episode, I think 74 with Angel Eduardo, who does a lot of work with FAIR and now has the FAIR Perspectives podcast. He talks about gaining an understanding of the humanity of the other person. Whether we
Hmm.
agree or disagree at the end of the conversation is almost irrelevant, but understanding the humanity, coming to it from a pro human perspective and saying, just because I'm not in agreement with you doesn't mean I have to dislike you. You are not some kind of monster because we disagree. You can come at it with a pro human perspective. I can come at it with a pro human perspective. And even if we disagree at the end of the day, we can still be amicable. We can still be friends at the end of that conversation. We don't have to hate each other because we disagree.
One of the things that a guest on my show, Matthew Barzin, he was the former ambassador to the UK and to Sweden. One of the things that he wrote in his book and he reiterated on my show is we have this idea that when we have these conversations and we're trying to find common ground, and you're right, there is a point, there are many points where we may not find common ground on that issue. He likes to say, we always are looking for the win-win, or the compromise. I give up a little bit, you give up a little bit, and we both feel like we've won something. He uses the term co-creation. What if we threw out the things that we say we're for right now, and we start to understand each other a little bit more, and then we co-create together an entirely new perspective, an entirely new path forward that doesn't even feel like it's compromised because neither side has ever said it before. We're
Right.
creating it in the moment, not taking a little bit of this idea and taking a little bit of this idea and kind of like smashing them together into something that doesn't feel quite right. What if we co-created something entirely new?
Right.
That's where this could hold the potential to really change hearts, minds, lives.
No doubt. It's very similar to the way Stephen Covey talks about synergy in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The sum of the parts is greater than the whole, rather
Right.
than simply compromising and every person giving up something. I'm always looking for the win-win in just about everything that I do. That book and the concept of looking for the win-win was very important in my own journey to becoming a happier and more well-minded person, let's say, because I wasn't always that way.
Yeah.
And simply looking for that win-win and looking for synergistic behavior between people that oppose each other, as opposed to simply compromising, I think is an incredibly important way to do things. I love that word, co-creation.
It's
And
beautiful, isn't it?
it is. It's a great word, co-creation. It even sounds more productive than synergy. I mean, synergy
Yeah.
sounds something technological, maybe, but at least in my mind, I'm. but co-creation, it just sounds, it sounds strong. It sounds productive. It sounds like a great action word that people can really get behind, and I like it a lot.
It's exciting. It's exciting. It's new.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. So let's talk a little bit, Michael, about you talk about I saw in one of the articles that you had written a few months back, you talked about the unsocial side of social media. And people people know that listen to the Derate the Hate podcast, they know I talk about social media just becoming this dumpster fire of hate, lies, and misinformation. And I've talked about keyboard warriors and the way that people say stuff to people online that they would never ever dream of saying to their face. I mean, one of the reasons I started doing the Derate the Hate podcast is because with my blog and stuff, I'd comment on different things. And, I'd have people literally, telling me to go kill myself or wishing harm upon my family. Talk about that unsocial side of social media, Michael, and what you found in your journey so far and people's thoughts on social media and how that's affected our relationships with each other.
Well, I'm not so much interested in the actual usage of social media. Like it's been said many, many times, social media is what you make of it. I wake up and I get on social media probably a little bit too early than is recommended, but I think we all do.
I think we all do.
I get on social media and I am flooded with positivity and ways forward and an optimistic look at life and relationships, because those are the people that I have chosen to follow, to surround myself with, to connect with. Social media has allowed me, as a husband and a father of two with a full-time job, to connect with people I never dreamed of being able to connect with. It's because of how I use it. It's because I've used it as the tool that it is to be social, to create social connections. There are people that obviously use it very differently, right? And we don't have to rehash that.
No.
What I am most interested in is the reasons those folks have decided, I'm going to use this free platform to wake up in the morning and voice my displeasure, my hate, my disdain for another human being, for a group of human beings. Like, what has been true in that person's life that they would see the incredible platform that we now have here in 2022 as we record this podcast on a Zoom, we connected on social media, we listen to each other's the power that we have to create positive connections in the world. Why has someone chosen the opposite? I believe in my heart of hearts, man, it's because so many people feel disconnected, untrustful of the person next to them, not at peace with their own life, and they feel like they don't have a voice. No one has listened to them. They feel as if they have been cast aside for whatever reason. They get constant messages from media and news and other social platforms that, yeah, your opinion doesn't matter as much as this person because they have more followers, they have a bigger audience than you, so you don't matter. So if in a world where I feel devalued, not listened to, and told that I am less than because of my social status, what am I going to do? If I have no other outlet for that, yeah, I'm going to lash out. I'm going to lash out. I'm going to troll. I'm going to be hate filled. I'm going to use the platform to try and bring down the thing that I see is contributing to me not being heard in this world. So I empathize with the person on the other side of the screen, the person tapping away furiously at their keyboard over stuff that we as human beings were never meant to even be aware of. Like if you think for the majority of the time that we have been human beings, no matter your religious view, however long you think that is, it is only within the last decade that we have had the level of exposure to instant news from anywhere across the world. We are inundated with every single piece of bad news in the entire world. That never happened before, certainly before social media. Let's jump it back to the 24-hour, cable news creation of CNN. It never happened before the 80s. So we're living in a time that we were never meant to live in, honestly.
Oh, that's an incredible point.
We don't know how to handle that, man. We don't know how to handle that information overload.
Well, it goes to another point that I've talked about several times on the podcast is our reticular activating system. We're only capable of absorbing so many things at any given time. And with that 24-hour news cycle or with the overwhelming inundation we have of bad news all around the world, because let's face it, again, the media they know that negativity, they know that fear sells soap. They know that division sells soap. So what are they going to put out there? They're not going to put out stories about butterflies, rainbows, and pretty flowers in the meadow all day long because it's nice. It's nice to see, but it doesn't keep people engaged. It doesn't keep people scared. It doesn't keep the viewer's eyes fixed on the prize. And that doesn't sell the soap the way that the division does. So you're right. If I can
tag on to that real quick,
yeah.
We are even incentivized as individuals. I had on my podcast recently Dominic Packer, who wrote the book, co-wrote the book, The Power of Us. And in their book with Jay Van Bevel, Dominic and Jay talk about the fact that on social media, posts that go viral and start to spread like wildfire, more often than not, have negative words. And so in a world where we're told you're only something if you go viral and have an audience and have, bigger, more followers, we're going to repeat the behaviors that we see get that. Because that's what we're told brings us, that's what we're told we as people are valuable. We're a commodity to where we can be an influencer and then get brand deals, and we can, go on fancy trips around the world that don't give you an actual view of our real lives. But that's what we've been told is valuable. And we're just repeating the behavior that we see gets us there fastest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to throw some other nuance into what you were just saying. There's a difference between local journalism and what we see in on cable news or the bigger news shows. That's entertainment. And I even said that in my TEDx talk. As a former journalist myself, the work that is being done at the local level is phenomenal. And these reporters, these journalists are doing incredible work.
Mm-hmm.
It is the people, for the most part, at the highest level of journalism where you see them have the biggest audience that are repeating these bad faith moves.
Yeah.
And if I can give an example of just how much this affects people, I wrote on LinkedIn probably about a year and a half ago now, my thoughts on how I thought journalists could repair their relationships with the public. Because
And that
let's
was
be
actually going to
honest.
be my next question. So
Yeah, let's be honest. Um, it's in a bad spot. It's in a
it is.
bad place.
Yep.
There's no trust from top to bottom. And so I gave my thoughts on that. And one of the things that I said is local journalists, local newspapers, local editorial staff and boards should not be endorsing political candidates. Full stop. They have for the entirety of the time that America has been America. They
Sure.
shouldn't do it anymore. It is creating too much division and distrust of the media. It is a conflict of interest when you are supposed to be unbiasedly covering political candidates to then go and endorse a candidate for political office doesn't make sense in today's world, in today's political society. I don't believe that should happen anymore. I also don't believe that journalists should be writing opinion articles anymore. I just don't know that if you are assigned to cover hard news, that you should then write that story and then write your opinion about it and have that be in the public record. Don't think it should happen. Now, I had a guy on my LinkedIn profile just rip me a new one over the fact that I didn't think that editorials should happen in newspapers anymore. He's a current journalist. He's a
Mm-hmm.
practicing journalist. I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I would love to have a conversation. I want to explain where I'm coming from. I would love to hear where you're coming from. And over a series of just back and forth emails, we could never connect on a Zoom call or on a phone call. I learned that he is terrified right now as a local journalist. He works in upstate
Mm-hmm.
New York. He said that his family and his own life have been threatened multiple times. And so when he saw my post, it brought up that feeling of threat. I am threatened right now. Here is
Mm-hmm.
someone else attacking my profession, the profession that I love, that I have dedicated my life to. I understand that 100%. And
Mm-hmm.
and he and I actually came to a good spot. I also learned that he was dealing with some family medical issues that he even admitted that probably contributed to how angry I was when I wrote on your post. I was like, look, I'm going to leave it up because it is an accurate reflection of how you felt and what you were
Right.
dealing with. But only you and I know the real reasons behind it. And that's what we're dealing with, man, is the person behind it. To go back to what I was saying earlier, the person behind that LinkedIn post that was just attacking me viciously, that person was hurting.
Mm-hmm.
That person was hurting and in a bad place and felt threatened. And it was a trigger for him. And what can I do but have empathy and sympathy for somebody in that spot?
Well, I think we've both heard the phrase, Michael, plenty of times. Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, they
and
do.
and,
Yeah.
and so when they see something, especially, and we also both know, especially people who've been doing this for a while, we also both know that the fastest way for somebody to misinterpret something is to see it in writing as opposed to seeing the emotion and
Oh yeah.
seeing the real life person doing it. Because you and I here having this conversation face to face, we can see each other's eyes, we can see each other's facial expressions, we can do that, and we can have that conversation and know kind of where I'm at emotionally or you're at emotionally when we have the conversation. But anybody who's married or ever been in a relationship or whatever, especially in the age of text messages and emails, knows that the fastest way to misconstrue a point is to put it in writing
You
or
got
read
it.
it. So so I think that contributes a lot to the anger too. And I
Sure
think there's
does.
certain people. I do agree with you in very large measure, on the local journalism part, and I'll give you an example to piggyback on your example, and it drives me absolutely crazy. Is there's one station here in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, that I watch the news on, and I watch it in the morning. I watch very little, almost no television. Period. I think it's a waste of time, but I watch one station in the morning from 4:30 till 5:15 or whatever for the period of time that I'm in the bathroom taking my shower, shaving, whatever I got to do. I have that station on because I think they do a very decent job with local stories for the most part. They
Mm-hmm.
don't interject their opinion. They don't seem agenda driven. It's decent. The very same news station on their Facebook page is completely the opposite. They have similar stories, and in fact, sometimes they talk about the same stories. But the person who's running that Facebook page and the stuff that they put in writing above the folder or whatever you call that section above the actual the article.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about it, but
The description or the post.
the description
yeah.
or
yeah,
whatever.
I get what you're saying.
It's so biased and so bad and things and I think they do that on purpose to garner an emotion and get more clicks and things like that. But I think it's unfortunate because I think it does a huge disservice to the journalistic integrity that comes along with what they're trying to do. And I think that's unfortunate. But I do in a way understand why they do what they do. But yeah, I think you made a great point in that local journalism is still a strong part of what we can look forward to and what we can look to for some integrity. Yeah. But again, I will equate that to another thing that I say quite often, and that's that those who govern closest govern best, in that the people on a national level, whether it be the media or local politicians versus local, or national media, national politicians versus local media and local politicians, the bombastic and flamboyant and just vitriolic stuff comes from the national level because they know that they don't really have to get down in the trenches and spend a lot of time with their constituents.
That's right.
And they can cover that broader audience, and they can completely discount half of the country because they don't have to deal with them. But whereas our local people, whether it be the local journalists or that guy that's, writing for the local paper and actually maybe sitting on a bar stool next to you at the local corner bar this afternoon, he's going to put a little bit more thought, a little bit more empathy and consideration for his readers and his people than that guy that's writing for say the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or whatever. Not to call them out, but just face it, they deserve it in a lot of cases. So I think it's very important. I think you made an incredible point there.
Yeah, and as Brene Brown said, it's hard to hate people up close. It really is. Not that it doesn't happen. There are plenty of people I don't enjoy being around, and I'm very close to them, but in proximity or distance. But sure. It's hard to hate people up close.
Yep. No, that's incredible, Michael. So, Michael, the follow-up question from everything that I've seen so far, whether it be your podcast or your writing, has been inspirational to me. Some of the guests that you've had on the podcast are bring some incredible value to the table, as well as you yourself bringing incredible value in the podcast. What would you say is your primary objective going forward? What would you like to see? What is your primary goal, Michael, with the follow-up question?
I want to get tons and tons of listeners. Now, I hope that at the end of the day, my show and the guests on it and the conversations that I have with them spark conversations. Even if it's just one other conversation where somebody was like, hey, I was listening to this person talk with Michael Ashford on the follow-up question, and I really disagreed with what they were saying, but I also thought it was really interesting what they were saying. And they go and talk to their spouse about that, or they go and talk to their best friend about that. And then we start having these in-person conversations. That is what out of all of this, that's what I want to have happen. Now, my own personal goal is I'm collecting stories so that I can write a book about all this. Nice. That I can package it in a way that, I I think we're kind of sick and tired of being told what to do. So as a storyteller, I just want to package people's stories and let folks figure out where they want to go on their own. I do not want to, my whole message is ask more questions. But even that is like, ask that question back to me. Is always asking questions the right thing to do? If I'm totally honest, no, it's not. Sometimes it doesn't behoove you. Sometimes there are bad faith actors that even getting into the conversation with them is unwise and unhealthy for you, maybe physically, maybe mentally. There's so much nuance in life that I think we're sick and tired of being told, do this thing and all your problems are going to be solved. So for me, my book and the stories that I capture through the podcast, I want it to be simply that. Stories that make you think. To go back to what I said earlier, stories that get you in your head and get you to just start thinking. Like we like simplicity. We as human beings like the simple answer. We don't want to waste the brain space or the effort or the energy to think through really complex ideas. But if I can get you to use a little bit more of those brain cells, not just to be introspective. You don't even have to talk to anybody else about this. Just start thinking about, gosh, what would I do in that situation? How would I respond if somebody said that to me? How would I feel if I grew up in that situation that I just heard that person describing? I believe that if we just start there, eventually down the road, our outward action is going to change and I won't even have to tell you what to do. So that's my goal, honestly, is just like, get you up here in your mind a little bit more and start thinking with a little bit more nuance rather than trying to simplify everything life down to its bare bones.
Right. Yeah. I don't know who first said it, but I love the phrase. I don't care that you think like I do. It's just the fact that I want you to think.
Yep.
And yeah, I think it really comes down to like Monica Guzman and I talked about that curiosity, or even you brought it up, that curiosity. Become curious about other people, and I think you're right. I think it makes a lot of sense to say not every conversation needs to be had. Sometimes we need to steer clear of certain people because it's not going to benefit us to have that conversation. But at least think about what that conversation may entail. Think about the person. Think about how they may have come to think what they think or do what they do, instead of just outright dismissing them as evil or bad or some kind of monster, as my friend Angel Eduardo, like to talk about. Not everybody that disagrees with us is a monster.
That's right.
And but it is incredibly important that we think, that we ask questions when it's appropriate to ask questions, and just more importantly, just try to be a good person. Try to be a good person, and try to bridge those divides wherever we can. That's what I continue to do with this podcast, Michael, and trying to better the world one attitude at a time. I know I can't reach everybody, but if every time I have one of these conversations, maybe one of your listeners catches something from me, or maybe one of my listeners catches something from you, and it changes their opinion, it changes their mind, it betters their attitude in some way, we have accomplished something, and we've accomplished something beautiful. So keep it up, Michael. I love what you're doing. Incredible work, man. And I hope this is the first of many conversations for us. I like I said in the beginning of this, we talk a lot of the same language. We talk to a lot of the same people. And I think if we can continue reaching out to the listeners of the D-Rate They Hate podcast and the follow-up question, we can do incredible things. So thank you very much for joining me on the D-Rate They Hate podcast. Any last thing you'd like to leave the DTH listeners with, Michael?
I think you beautifully summed it up there, man. Couldn't have said it better myself. That's my goal. I know that's your goal. And hey, any way that we can make things a little bit more positive in the world, I'm all for that. So thanks for having me on, man.
Awesome. I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you, Michael. Friends, let me say again how incredibly grateful I am to have had Michael Ashford here on the D-Rate the Hate podcast. Do not forget to check out our show notes, where you can find a link to his TEDx speech, very inspirational. Find out everything that's going on with him at michaelashford.com, and also check out the Follow-Up Question podcast for more great conversations and people just trying to better the world, just like we're doing here. Friends, I just want to say again how very, very grateful that I am that you took the time to join me for another D-Rate the Hate podcast episode. Please, share us with your friends, share us with your network. If you haven't done so already, subscribe and talk your friends into doing the same. Feedback and ratings, wherever you get your audio, always greatly appreciated. And with that, I will just say get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything that you've got, and remember, it's up to you to make each and every day the day that you want it to be. Friends, if there was anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, I would love to hear about it. Email me, wilk@wilksworld.com, or hit me up on most social media platforms. With that, I am going to back on out of here, and we will catch you next week. Take care.